Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Natural Scotland Week 2025. This is our third session of the week. Just like several of you have done already, please share your school name and class in the chat. We're really looking forward to today's session. And just in case you may need it, please make sure that you have a paper and pen or pencil ready in case you need it for our lesson today. Before we jump into it, though, just like we've been doing for the rest of the week, we're going to start with some quiz questions. So please get your thinking caps on. And these questions are based on the session that I did with you yesterday. And the first question is, which of these species that lives in moss can survive in space? Put two hands up if you think it is a tardigrade. Put one hand up if you think it is a rotifer. And put hands on your head if you think it is a mite. Which of these species can survive in space? I think some of you are coming in with the answers, and you are saying the answer is tardigrades. If other people can't see my slides, please let me know in the chat. The first thing to do if you can't see them is to leave the meeting and rejoin. And congratulations, everyone who said tardigrades. You are bang on. Yes. So remember, these are also known as little water bears, and they have been sent into space for 10 days. And when they came back, they were rehydrated, and almost 3/4 of them survived. Here is my next question for you. Which of these is not a property of mosses? They can survive for weeks without water. Put two hands up. They are the first colonizers on bare ground and rock, and they can help form soil. Put one hand up. Or they can grow without light. Put hands on your head. So which of those is not a property of mosses? So we've got two answers in so far, and you're both saying the same thing. This is not a property of moss, and that is that they can grow without light. And you are bang on, yes. That is not a property of moss. They can grow in the shade, but mosses are a type of plant. They're a type of bryophyte, and they do need some light in order to grow because they get their energy from their light. Brilliant answers. Well done. So this week, as I've been saying in the past two sessions, we would like you to find an area in your grounds or local area where you could make a place for nature, and then make a plan for how you will create that place for nature. And you can send your plans to us to be in with a chance of winning a copy of The Man Who Planted Trees, and also some wildflower seeds to plant in your grounds. And there's a resource to accompany this activity, which Nicola is just sharing in the chat now. But please have a go at that this week. And what we're going to be learning about today. Well, we're going to be learning why it's important to look after our native plants. We're going to be seeing how the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh are caring for Scotland's native plants. And we're also going to be thinking about how we can use persuasive writing to help protect nature. And that's enough talking from me. So I'm really excited to introduce Eve Armstrong to you, who you can see on your screen as well. Eve is from the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh, and she's going to be taking us on a tour of one of their plant nurseries. And a big thank you to Eve for joining us today and giving us this special behind the scenes look at a very important project that is helping to look after our native plants. So that's all from me. I'll hand over to Eve and I'll see you back here a little bit later. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Josh, for that fantastic introduction. And I'm excited that you've been learning about mosses because we are actually going to have a little look at some mosses a bit later on. But first, I want to welcome you to the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh. And some of you might live near this garden. We also have 3 regional gardens across Scotland. One in Argyll and Bute, one down in the Borders, and one in Dumfries and Galloway. So you might be near one of them, or you might be near one of the other amazing botanic gardens that we have across Scotland. So if you are close to a garden, I would encourage you to visit because there's lots of amazing things you can learn there. But today, like Josh said, we are going to be thinking about some of the work that we do here at the Botanics. We do a lot of growing and looking after plants, but here in the nursery, I'm going to show you a very special project. This is called the Scottish Plant Recovery Project. Now, we've mentioned a nursery a couple of times, and I want to make sure you know what that is. A plant nursery is pretty much exactly the same as a human nursery. So nurseries are where kids go when they're really young to learn and grow, and that's exactly what we're doing here with our plants. This is where we grow our plants when they're young, when they're a bit vulnerable, and when they're a bit stronger, we can plant them out into the garden or even other places as well. So like I said, today we are in the part of the nursery that's used by the Scottish Plant Recovery Team. This is a project that's sponsored by the Scottish Government, and it's about looking at plants in Scotland which are endangered. This means they're at risk of becoming extinct, at risk of not growing in Scotland anymore at all. So in Scotland, we have about 1,600 what we call vascular plants. Now, that's just a big fancy word for the kinds of plants you think of when I say plants. Stuff like trees and bushes and flowers and all that kind of stuff are our vascular plants. Our moss wouldn't be one of them. That's one of our bryophytes. So we've got all these vascular plants, and 200 of those are endangered in Scotland. And so we had to choose of those 200, just 10 that we wanted to look after. And that was a pretty big choice, but we had to choose 10 plants which are the sort of most endangered, most at risk, and the ones that we felt we could most help. So the Scottish Plant Recovery Team are growing those plants here in the nursery, and then they're going to take them back out into Scotland and do some planting. This year, we've just started doing some planting back out into the wild, and the hope is that this will allow those species to grow a bit stronger, to spread a bit more, and hopefully not be endangered anymore. So we're going to do all that, and at the same time, we're going to think about how we can use our voices as a powerful tool to help people understand why plants are at risk, why we should protect plants, and how we can tell the stories that we have about plants. So to start us off, I thought I would start by reading a little bit of writing written by someone pretty famous here in Scotland. He's probably our most famous poet. So I'm going to start with a Robert Burns poem. And the reason I'm starting with Burns is because he was often known as nature's bard. He is our poet laureate, of course, and he wrote a lot of poems about nature, about how he loved nature, and a lot of poems to try and get other people to change their mind. So this poem, I'm not going to read the whole thing because Burns liked a really long poem, but it's all about a place up in near Blair Athol, near the River Nith, and it was a place that he loved, and it has loads of great Scots words in it. So do look out for some of those words, and I will do my best. I'm not a native Scots speaker, but I will do my best to do it justice. So this is a little extract from On the Destruction of Drumlanrig Woods. When glinting though the trees appeared, the with white cot aboon the mill, and peaceful rose in her leek, but that slowly curling clamb the hill. But now the cot bare and cauld, and leafy bield for ever gane, and scarce the stinted birks left, to shiver in the blast it's lain. Alas, quoth I, what rueful chance has twinned your stately trees, has laid your rocky bosom bare, has stripped your cleaded braes? Was it the bitter eastern blast that scattered blight in early spring? Or 'twas the wildfire scorched the boughs, or cankerworm with secret sting? Man, cruel man, the genius sighed, As though the cliffs he sank him down, the worm that gnawed my bonny trees, that reptile wears a ducal crown. So you can see in this poem, he's setting it up. He's saying, what has happened to these trees? Was it wildfire? Was it pests and disease? Was it an accident or a flood? And in the end, he concludes, it was people who destroyed the trees. And he's upset by this. He's sharing his loss, his anger, his emotions that he's feeling about that, in the hope that the landowner who felled these trees will hear that, will see his poem, and will then make a change. And this actually happened. This was an effective strategy. Basically, he sent this poem to the landowner, who read it and realized that he should be planting trees and looking after nature in his area. And he replanted trees around that river. And in fact, Blair Athol now is a really kind of tree-filled part of the Highlands, partly because of this poem, because the landowner there was moved by Burns's words. So this is a really interesting kind of persuasive writing. So we're going to be talking a bit about persuasive writing and how you can use your words to impact other people and change their minds. I actually have a really great tool that you can use for this, and I'm going to share my slides so you can see them. So just give me a little second to do that. Let's see if we can find it. Here we go. Fantastic. Aha, here we are. So in my slides here, you can see this great acronym. It's called a forest, which of course I love because who doesn't love trees? But it actually stands for lots of different factors which you could use to make your writing more persuasive. So the A stands for alliteration. That's when we start words with the same letter or sound over and over. That can make something more impactful. The F is for facts. So that's just state the truth, tell people exactly what's happening. The O is for opinions. So this is things that you think or believe. R is for rhetorical questions. So rhetorical questions are questions that you ask, but you don't expect people to answer. So you could see Burns doing this in his poem. He was saying, what happened to these trees? Was it the cankerworm? Was it the forest fire? And he knows the answer to those questions. He's using it as a tool to get people to think about, if it wasn't those things, what was it? E is emotive language, and Burns was definitely using that. He was talking about the terrible nature of it and how awful it looked now. So he was being really emotive with his language. S is for statistic. These are your facts and figures, your numbers. And then 3 is your rule of 3. That is basically grouping things into groups of 3, about 3 facts, 3 ideas, all in one go. That's about what you want in your point if you are arguing a point. So we'll come back to this in a little bit, but it's a really lovely tool to use if you're thinking about doing some persuasive writing. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my slides because it is definitely time to think a little bit about some of the plants that are around me. So since Burns was talking about trees, I thought I might start by talking about some of the trees that are here behind me. These are a really special tree called the Arran whitebeam. These are a really interesting tree because they're what's called a hybrid. A hybrid is when we get 2 species, so that's just a kind of living thing, and mix them together to get a whole new species. Now, this doesn't always happen. Lots of species can't mix together. And this is one that happened naturally. So it's not humans that have decided they want to mix them together. Instead, it's one that happened in nature. This is a mix between a tree called a rowan and another tree called a rock whitebeam. And this mixing happened on the Isle of Arran, which is why we call it the Arran whitebeam. I think actually it happened a lot of different places around the world. It's quite a common hybridization. It happens a lot, but it was first noticed in Arran. It was first studied there. So that's why it gets this name. So these are really interesting. They mix in lots of different ways. And one of the Arran whitebeams, there are only 3 trees left growing in the wild. So as you can see, that is super duper endangered. I actually have a little slide to show you, which I will share again so you can see, that shows you exactly where we find them. So it'll probably show a forest again. It does. Here we go. Here's the whitebeam, the Arran whitebeam. So on the left there, you can see a beautiful picture of its lovely berries. So that's definitely something that it gets from the rowan tree. You've probably seen red berries on a rowan before. And then on the right-hand side, we've got a map of the UK. And those little black dots, you can see only found on Arran. So you can see it's found in this really small area. We don't have lots of them growing in the wild. So this is one of the reasons why we've chosen that plant as one to protect through the Scottish Plant Recovery Programme. If you are near the Edinburgh Garden, we do have one growing in our garden near the East Gate. So you can go find it if you want to see it in person. These ones are looking pretty good. It was a big challenge to grow these trees. So we had a lot of trouble trying to get them to grow. At first, we collected seeds and we tried to grow them from seed and nothing happened. And then we took cuttings and we tried to get them to root from cuttings and nothing happened. And eventually, about a year ago, we managed to get some little seedlings growing from some seeds that had been in the freezer for about 2 years. So actually what they needed was just a bit of time to rest, a little time to wait, and now we finally got them going. So we're pretty excited to see how those go and if we get a few more growing. But as you can see, we've got lots here. They're here in between, and there's a lot actually in these shade tunnels as well. We're protecting them a bit from the colder weather. Though this week it doesn't feel like it's been colder, does it? Brilliant. So I actually have another plant here as well that the Scottish Plant Recovery team are looking after. This is something called Alpine Blue Sow Thistle. And it only grows in 4 places around the country. I can actually pick one up and show you it nice and closely. So you can see it right here. Aha. I need to hide my face and then it'll go in focus. There you go. Fantastic. So this is our Alpine Blue Sow Thistle. And it's actually endangered because of our deer population. So in Scotland, we have a lot of deer, but the big problem is that we don't any longer have any predators of the deer. Deer would be traditionally eaten by things like lynx and wolves, and in other countries, they still have those animals. But here in Scotland, we don't anymore, which means we've got a lot more deer. And deer love eating sow thistle. It's basically like super delicious lettuce. That means these only grow in the sort of smallest little ledges that even deer can't reach. So we had to go and find some really remote places on steep cliff sides, and that's where you find them. Luckily, because it grows well in other countries that still have lynx and wolves, we could actually bring plants in from other countries to mix with our native population and hopefully make it a bit stronger. But this meant that when our horticulturists were going out and collecting seeds to grow these plants, they had to go on some pretty big adventures. I actually have a video, which I believe Josh is going to share for us, that shows some of the amazing footage taken by our horticulturists, our plant scientists, while they were exploring. So Josh, if you could share that now for me, that would be amazing. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Josh, for sharing that. So as you can see, they went to some really beautiful and amazing places while trying to find this plant, this alpine blue sow thistle. In fact, one of the things that you saw were some beautiful drone shots. And when they were flying the drone, they hit the problem that the slope they were on was so steep that they couldn't actually land the drone. So they had to fly the drone around to look at all the cliffs to see if there was any plant growing. And then when it came back to them, they had to literally catch the drone out of the air. So some pretty cool adventures. I realized that I didn't share any pictures of the sow thistle in flower, so I'm going to do that just now, just because it has this beautiful purpley blue flower. And as you can see, it's just found on the map on the right-hand side, up in the cairngorms in just a few places on these really remote hillsides. But you can see the beautiful sow thistle when it's in flower. Our ones are in leaf, but not quite in flower yet. Hopefully in a few months, with a bit more sunshine, we'll get some lovely flowers. So I've shown you a few things here, but I'm going to take you to another part of the nursery now to show you one more plant that is really, really important. To do that, I'm going to have to pick up the camera and move around. You might catch a little glimpse. I've got someone with me called Gillian. She is helping me with all my tech just now. So you might catch a glimpse of her in the background as well. I'm going to walk you through the nursery and we'll hopefully spot some things along the way, and then we will find our last plant. So I'm going to grab you now and turn you this way. If it makes you feel a little bit wobbly and a little bit sick, I'm sorry about that. I'm holding you steady. I'm going to sneak out the back here and give you a lovely view of the nursery as we go around. So as you can see in the nursery of plants, a lot of these will end up in one of our 4 gardens. So we are heading around here to find a very special thing. Green and yellow domes are called shade tunnels. They're basically just to keep the wind off the plants a little bit. Gives them a little bit more shade and a little bit more protection from the wind. They're not quite like greenhouses, but they do help the plants a little bit when. Right, we are going into this green shade tunnel here on the left. And as we go in, I will have to be very careful and wash my feet. So this is something we do to hopefully stop the spread of any pests and diseases. So I'll just have to grab this bucket here and dip my feet inside. So this has some disinfectant in it that will make sure I don't spread anything from the other places that I've been. And I'm going to pop you down here and we will hopefully, aha, fantastic. We have made it all the way around to another location. And now we are looking at something behind me, which is very, very important. I'm just going to tweak that camera angle just a slight bit so you can see a little more of it. Brilliant. So this is called the cascade, and it is to grow a plant which was never grown in a nursery before. It's called marsh saxifrage. And I'm going to show you a picture of it before I show you some close-ups of it. So back to my slides. Where are they hiding? Aha. So this is marsh saxifrage. It's got this beautiful yellow flower and it grows in a few different places in Scotland and across the UK. So you can see those little black dots on the map. We get them in the cairngorms, we get them right up in Caithness. We get them a little bit in the northern part of Ireland and a little bit down in the Peak District. So we've got a few places across the UK that we find it. But it's a really interesting plant because it has some really particular things it needs to grow. It likes to be wet, but it doesn't want to be too wet. It has to be just the right height above the water. It likes that water to be just the right temperature, and it likes that water to be super duper clean. This made it really hard to grow in a nursery. And actually, before we were growing it here, it had never been done successfully. And that's because we built this thing here. This is the cascade. The cascade is basically an artificial bog. So marsh saxifrage grows in bogs, in that kind of squishy, boggy upland areas. And we had to create a bog here in the nursery. To do that, we have got a big tank of water, which is just behind you guys there. And it is pumped all the way along here, all the way along in these pipes, all the way, all the way, all the way, all the way, right up, all the way. I'm going very far away, all the way to the very, very top, where it is pumped in and it trickles through the moss here. And you were learning about moss yesterday and how important it is. This has got lots of different kinds of moss, but particularly sphagnum moss. And sphagnum moss is brilliant at filtering the water. It makes that water really clean. And so it trickles through, trickles through, trickles through. And then down here, what we get is we get our plant growing in that moss. I'm going to pick you up and try and give you a slightly better view of this plant. So I'm going to bring you around and we'll hopefully get a lovely close up. You can see its beautiful green leaves here and the moss that it's growing in. And so this has been a really important way of growing this plant, which means we can then plant it back out into Scotland. Fantastic. So what I think I'll do now is I will read another poem, this time from a much more modern poet who's using some of those techniques we talked about with the A Forest acronym. So I'm going to share that again just to remind you of it, because as I read this poem, what I would really like is for you to try and see if you can spot any of those techniques being used by the poet. So, oh, will it let me go? Aha, here we go. So remember, we've got alliteration, the same sound being repeated over and over. We've got facts, we've got opinions, so things that the author thinks about something, rhetorical questions, questions that we don't want answers to, emotive language, talking about our emotions. We've got statistics, numbers, and facts, and we've got the rule of three. So if you think you spot any of those, you could pop the letter in the chat as I'm reading or just afterwards. So I'm going to stop sharing the slide and find that poem. So this is from a modern poet called Mandy Haggett, and she is a Scottish poet. She lives here in Scotland, and she's been to the garden before and written poems inspired by the garden. And this poem is called Life. And the birch says it's about dancing and colour. And the rowan says it's about berries and birds. And the willow says it's about shape and shelter. And the hazel says it's about love and lichen. And the aspen says it's about growth and the wind. But I say it's about listening to trees. So here, aha, somebody's already spotted alliteration, birds and berries, absolutely. So one of those persuasive writing techniques. Yep, more people saying alliteration, very good. There's definitely some emotive language as well in there, and definitely some opinion. She says she thinks it's about this, they think it's about that. She's sharing opinions in that one. But brilliant, very well spotted. So, oh, berries and birds, yes, very good. We're spotting that alliteration, brilliant work. What I want you to have a think about, we're going to do one little activity to get us to think about that emotive language, because I think emotive language is that really powerful part of persuasive writing, our feelings about something and sharing that. So to do that, what we are going to do is I want you to picture in your head somewhere that you love. Maybe it's a natural place that you've been trying to create in your playground this week as part of Natural Scotland Week, somewhere beautiful and natural and gorgeous, and think about those emotions that you feel when you're there. And then imagine, like what happened in the poem that I read from Burns, someone destroyed it, someone damages it, pulls those trees up, changes it in some way. What are the emotional words that you would use to describe that? What feelings would you have? You could pop them in the chat just now if you've got any feelings coming out. I'll give you just a couple of minutes to have a little think. What are those emotional words? Brilliant. I'm seeing some great words here. Disappointed, angry, annoyed, hurt, shocked, unhappy, confused. That's a great one. Angry, happy, disappointed, sad. Yeah, I'd definitely be feeling sad. Heartbroken. Oh, frustrated. Yeah, definitely. Annoyed, sad. I'm furious. That's a great one. Furious. It feels very emotive, doesn't it? Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing those words. I know I'm moving us on very, very fast, but if you want to explore some of those emotive language and persuasive writing techniques, we do have an activity that you can do alongside this and that you can download from the Keep Scotland Beautiful website to explore that a little bit more and do some persuasive writing of your own. Oh, confused. Yeah, that's a really good one. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by all your amazing words. Because I actually have a really exciting guest for you. I have got someone with us who actually helped to build this amazing cascade and works for the Scottish Plant Recovery team. So this is Rebecca Drew Galloway. Come on over, Rebecca. Let's make sure we've got space for us both to stand here.
Hello.
Amazing. And if anyone has any questions for Rebecca, you can ask them in the chat and I will pass them on. But what's your job in the garden?
Oh, so I am, it's a long title. It's a Scottish native plant conservation horticulturist.
Oh my goodness.
So I am particularly here, and my role is to conserve our native species. So we also plant in the garden, but we have a huge part of actually getting to plant all around Scotland and restore some species which are at risk of extinction.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we saw some amazing photos of your team. I think of you as well, sort of abseiling down cliffs and in very wild places, going on quite an adventure. Oh my goodness. Someone else has asked, have you ever found any poisonous plants?
Oh yes, yeah. There's there's a few. Luckily, I've not had any negative interaction with them, but yeah, it's quite important to know which plants you're working with and the risks for that. But yeah, nothing growing here at the nursery, thankfully.
That's good. Very good. Do you have a favorite part of your job?
Oh, it's really hard. I find it really rewarding to propagate the plants and actually just to see them grow. But I have to admit, there is nothing better than being able to call them inside your office for the day.
Yeah,
So
that's
to have that
cool.
opportunity is pretty amazing.
Brilliant. Yeah. Do you ever have to forage and get plants from the wild?
Yes, yeah. So actually, a majority of these plants here in the cascade behind us, I actually did go out and we've collected from several sites from the wild. So yeah.
Oh, how old is the oldest plant you have?
Oh, that's a really good question. I probably would maybe say from 1999, which isn't that old, but we're bringing lots of material in to plant back out, and that is a plant called the Alpine Blue Sow Thistle, which we've been very lucky with the gardens. It's been a project for ours for many years.
Oh, brilliant.
So,
we were just looking at that in the other shade tunnel. Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
one of my favorites.
So that.
But hopefully today you've got a bit of a sense of why it's important to look after our native plants, and you've seen what the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh are doing and the amazing work that they're doing to care for Scotland's plants. And it's amazing that we have a team who literally go out into the wild to try and find some of these really rare plants so that they can be brought back and we can grow them to help support them as a species. And hopefully finally that you've had a chance to have a bit of a look at some persuasive writing that we can use to help protect nature. And one thing that we would like you to do is that we hope that you feel inspired by today's lesson to go and create a piece of persuasive writing to encourage others to look after our natural world. And Nicola will be sharing that in the chat with you now. As always, it's lovely for you to share the amazing work that you have been doing with us. And we love to share some of that work in our Fridays assembly. So please make sure that you share all of the work that you would like to share with people by 2 p.m. tomorrow. And we will be able to include that in our assembly on Friday. And please share anything that you're doing for Natural Scotland Week on social media, and we can share your posts from public accounts at our assembly as well. As always, we really value any feedback that you have on our live lessons. Nicola's just shared a very short feedback form, and there's space for teacher and pupil voice, so it'll be lovely to hear that. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined by Nature Scott, who are going to explain how we can link our school grounds up with other nature in our area to create wildlife corridors. And we hope that you can join us for that today. But thank you so much for joining us. A big thank you to Eve. I hope that they're okay and their internet gets back online soon. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow and Friday for our assembly. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.